Hello and welcome to the Naira Bets handicapping session on the opening day of Saratoga and beyond. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatale. So happy. This is the show I've been waiting to do, and so happy that Naira Bets is on board to help us out here. And I'm also so happy to have an excellent panel together again to run through this opening day card with me and also to talk about the Saratoga meet in a macro way. Our first guest returning to the DRF airwaves, where he's a very familiar place for him. He's Daily Racing Forum's New York handicapper. You know him from the great work he does on DRF TV, previewing and reviewing races, as well as the excellent analysis in the paper. He's Mike Beer. Mike, how are you today?
I'm great, Pete. Happy to be back on with you, of course. I like you, I think I was waiting for this webinar more than any other one because Saratoga is just a couple days away now.
It's fun. It's like Christmas Eve all week long. I love it. I also want to welcome back to our airwaves. He's a Timeform US analyst. You know him from the work he does not only on the Timeform blog, not only on the drf.com website, but also the great work he does on Naira's Talking Horses show. David Aragona, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be doing this with you and Mike. Kind of bracing myself this week for the calm before the storm with all this great racing coming up. 40-day meet. It's quite a routine that we get into, but I mean, it's great.
That's actually a great place to start. With a meet like this, when you've got 40 days, when it's 6 days a week, now I guess it's a little bit different for you guys because you have your deadlines to consider in addition to the plays you're going to be making at the windows. But what advice do you have for the people listening trying to plan their summers and try to figure out a way to not get snowed under with all the work in a meet like this? David, how do you, when the card comes up, do you dive right in? Do you have any sort of system of organization to help you through?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm watching the cards live, I kind of have to take a deep breath at noon every day because, when you're doing your handicapping, like whether it's at night or in the morning, I'm kind of always having 3 different race cards in my head at the same time because I'm writing about one, I'm handicapping one, and then you have today's card that's coming up that you've already done the work for. So, I mean, there can be a lot running through your head at one time. And I think you just kind of have to take a step back every day, review your opinions and just kind of, basically take the day as it comes and enjoy the day before moving on. Because if you kind of get lost in everything that's going on around you, it can really get overwhelming quickly.
Mike, as somebody who does a lot of trip work, is that something you try to do in real time during Saratoga? Or do you do it day by day? Do you spend the whole dark day going back over trips for the previous week? How do you get all that work done?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. Unfortunately for me, I'm not someone who can do it in real time. There's a real chance that I am the worst live race watcher walking the earth right now. I will watch a race live, think, this is what I thought of the race, blah, 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 this horse ran well, this horse didn't, and then go watch the replay and without fail, completely change my opinion after I go through the replay a little bit more cold-blooded. But yeah, I think for someone like me, the real thing that I have to do is to try and keep up with the replays because that's, the majority of my handicapping anyway. So I try and, keep up with the replays every night after the races are over, get home, take, whatever it is, 2 to 3 to 4 hours and go through all the replays and get my notes in. It's hard to do that with 6 racing days and 13 race cards on Saturdays. It's a lot to keep up with. So I do wind up spending almost a majority of my dark days sitting in front of the computer watching replays. But that's just how it goes at Saratoga. And to me it's a lot of work. Sometimes it feels like too much work. Mostly though, it feels like it's worth it. And then when it's over, you take a nice long nap.
When you're giving the kind of insights that you do nearly daily in the Saratoga meet, it's understandable there's a price to be paid for that. Before I ask you guys a few more general questions about the Saratoga meet, I want to tell the listeners about the $200 bet and get sign-up bonus. Bet the action right from home by opening a Naira Bets wagering account. Sign up today and you can earn up to a $200 new member sign-up bonus. Use the promo code DRF200 to bet 200 and get 200. Also, as a Naira Bets member, you get exclusive access to the Naira Bets Pick 5 offered daily on the late Pick 5 at Saratoga. Naira Bets is available to horse players nationwide, so go to nairabets.com and enter the promo code DRF200 to instantly qualify for this Bet 200 Get 200 sign-up promotion. Naira Bets, racing's best play. All right, the next area I want to get into with you gentlemen is angles that you've found in the past to be successful at this Saratoga meeting. Mike, I'll start with you. I know, you're obviously more of a trip-oriented player, somebody who takes the cards as they come, but I'm guessing that over the years you've noticed at least a thing or two that seem to be more relevant when the horses head upstate than when they're downstate at Belmont or Aqueduct. Do you have anything to share in that regard?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, listen, I'm not, as you said, I'm not a big angle player. I don't look for too many of them. And I try not to get caught. I try not to get caught looking for angles either, just because I don't want to, be sitting around waiting for things to but, for Saratoga, for me, I mean, a lot of times my favorite races up there, and unfortunately they don't write a ton of them, but my favorite races are the two-turn dirt races up there. Because I really do think that's one of the main areas where you get what seem like form reversals from horses who just, either are really good around one turn at Belmont, but don't really want to go, those demanding two-turn 9 furlong races at Saratoga. So it seems like they just, throw in a bad race. But I feel like sometimes if you're paying attention, you can see that stuff coming with those horses. And the inverse of that is also true where, horses especially horses I feel like are stable at Aqueduct and who do well routing at Aqueduct will all of a sudden find their form again. And the route races at Saratoga. So I'd like to look for those. And, luckily we have a couple of those two-turn dirt races on the opening day card. And other than that, I try and keep an open mind about the turf racing up there, especially if you don't get a lot of rain. I think you want to really pay attention if the courses get really firm because they can get really speed favoring. So we'll see if that plays out this year. It's happened the last couple of summers up there. And, especially the turf routes on the inner, I think those are sometimes the most chaotic races, especially when they get big fields. I mean, those races, you get very few favorites winning. I think last meet it was something like less than, if you're on 25% favorites winning on the inner turf. Those races tend to have a lot of chaos and you get upsets in those races.
Those are some excellent insights. David, what do you have to add in terms of angles you found profitable over the years at Saratoga?
I mean, the angles that I mostly look at lately are trainer angles. I think one of the biggest decisions you have to make going into the Saratoga meet lately is what you do with Chad Brown's runners, because, he's basically usurps Todd Pletcher these days as the king of Saratoga. And, I was just looking at some stats going back the past couple of seasons, especially for him, because I do think it's important to look at trainer stats specifically at Saratoga because you do see certain patterns emerging. Chad Brown wins at a very respectable clip, of course, but his ROI the past couple of seasons, especially in the turf routes, has just not been what you'd expect it to be, hovering in the high 150s, 160 area on a $2 wager, which, that's awesome. He's winning races in bunches, but that just speaks to the fact that, the past couple of seasons, his horses are routinely underlays, and I think you have to, be careful with him because he wins a lot, but there are also situations where horses that are going after other trainers that have similar merits are going to be inflated prices just because of the Chad Brown factor and his horse is taking a lot more money. So that's something I try to pay attention to. I also try to look at trainers that could get hot up at Saratoga. I think it's important to kind of just take a glance at the recently completed Belmont meet and what happened down there, because a lot of times you see trainers kind of laying low during Belmont or just sometimes having bad luck during Belmont, having a lot of second and third place finishes. You know, trainers like George Weaver or Bill Mott, who had pretty lackluster Belmont meets, but typically do well up at Saratoga and know how to turn it on up there. They're ones that I want to watch in case they get hot at this meet.
Great ideas. Weaver's record up there, especially on the turf with young developing horses, so impressive. And yeah, the Belmont meet, he'll have, the way the Belmont meet went, he'll have plenty of conditions left as well up at Saratoga. Definitely a good one to keep an eye on, I think. Mike mentioned the idea of keeping an eye out for if that turf course gets sun-baked, how speed favoring it can become, especially as the meet wears on if there's not a lot of rain. Do either of you have any other track bias trends you'll be keeping an eye out for as the meet develops?
I don't. You know, I don't think. I think Saratoga generally is a pretty fair racetrack. You know, I don't really go in there thinking that, you know, one running style or another is going to have an advantage in any one of the races at any of the distances on either of the surfaces. That's just me. I don't know if David agrees with that or not.
Yeah, I agree. Overall, the main track especially is really fair consistently throughout the meet. The one thing I would say, and Mike kind of alluded to this, in the two-turn races, you do find that it takes, I think, more stamina than horses typically need to get the same distances at Belmont or even the inner track at Aqueduct. So, I mean, you do want to take note of horses that really want to go the longer distances on the dirt. And even in some of the elongated sprint races, like 6.5, 7 furlongs, you notice a lot of horses getting pretty leg weary in the last 16th or 8th of a mile, whereas at Belmont, maybe they could carry that speed a bit better. But overall, I agree that the track is very fair.
Yeah, and when it is biased, it seems to be randomly biased. You could have a day where the rail seems dead, and then that gets cleaned up, and then another day the next week randomly that's speed favoring, and then it goes back. So nothing really the handicappers can hang their hat on. You just got to pay attention every day and make notes and hope to figure out what's going on. I want to ask you one more general question, and then we will get down to the brass tacks of this opening day card. Any horses, and David, I'll start with you on this one, any horses in particular you're looking forward to see race? And this can be from a sporting point of view, or it could be somebody you're waiting for on your horse to watch list who you're eager to have a bet on.
You know, I used to do this a lot more in the past, kind of make lists of horses that I was looking to bet back at Saratoga. I do it a lot less lately, mostly because the races up here are just so tough, and, you know, kind of marrying myself to any one horse ahead of time is it hasn't always worked for me in the past, at this meet in particular, with horses coming in from out of town. And, you know, I don't want to be put into the situation where I feel like I can be a little lazy about a race and kind of take for granted that I'm going to pick a horse and maybe not consider other horses that would appeal to me under other circumstances if I had given it more of a chance. So I kind of try to not do that and just take every race as it comes, while having in the back of my head trips that I've seen at Belmont or before at other racetracks, and kind of, you know, knowing what to look for in handicapping, but to keep an open mind as much as possible.
That makes sense. Mike, how about you? Any specific runners or star horses you're looking forward to seeing this meet?
Well, there's probably a lot of horses I'm looking forward to see run up there. I will say I didn't get caught quite as off guard as I really would have by this question, if only because I was asked this exact question over the weekend by somebody. And so, of course, at that time, I didn't have an answer. I just sort of gave him a blank stare and couldn't come up with the name of a horse. But I will say I did manage to finally come up with one horse. So I don't even know if he will run up there, because you never know with Linda Rice. But I'm really interested to see if Seymour Deeney shows up. She said maybe the Forgo. I'd be very interested to see if he shows up. If only because I feel like he's the kind of horse, and I happen to be a fan, but the kind of horse who you could really take either position on. You could really take a position for him. He's run 3, you know, races, and he come back from a layoff and he just ran the big 113 buyer over that wet track in the state dinner at the end of the Belmont meet. And I think he's good, but I think you could take the opposite position on him too, in that, you know, he beat a couple of really soft fields at Laurel, and then he did catch the wet track last time. So I'll be interested to see if he shows up, just to see what he does against some better horses. And as we're talking about horses to see what happens when they run up here. I wonder, just because I was watching the replays before this thing started, Dwayne Lucas has a 2-year-old who, and I won't come up with his name right now, but he was defeated by one of the horses running in the Sanford on Saturday, beaten by a Romans horse. He finished second to a Romans horse. That Lucas horse, I wonder if he's in Saratoga. He's a 2-year-old who ran second to the Dale Romans horse running in the Sanford on Saturday. If that horse shows up, he had a little bit of a trip in his debut.
All right, a couple of good ideas there. I'm going to read another word from our sponsor, and then we will start diving in. This one's about the Trifecta 10% winners bonus. Every day, a selected Saratoga Stakes race earns you a 10% winners bonus. The bonus is capped at $20 per player per day and must be placed on your mobile device to qualify. With Naira Bets, you simply win more, plain and simple. Naira Bets is available to horse players nationwide, so go to nairabets.com and enter promo code DRF200 to instantly qualify for the Bet 200, Get 200 sign-up promotion. Lots of other great info on there as well. Naira Bets, racing's best play. And now I think we're ready to talk about some specific races that are going to be happening on Friday. Mike, we'll start with you. No pressure, but can you give us a winner to start off this 2017 Saratoga meeting?
I have to give you a winner in the first race? Can I give you? I'll be happy. I'll be happy if I give you one winner on the card.
Is it that tough, you think?
It's a pretty well. The first race, I struggled with it. I'm hoping David has something really interesting to say about it. I don't know. I thought this race was pretty tough. Indicat, the one, is the morning line favorite. He's the horse to beat, I guess. I don't know how much I love him. I do appreciate the fact, though, that he's one of those horses that we were talking about before. He likes the 9 furlongs at Saratoga. The 2-turn routing seems to be his thing. He's run really well up here at this distance in the past, and he's got the rail. He'll probably get a good trip. I get him. I picked him second, just because. And this is a horse I picked. Rich Daddy on top, the 5. I wish it was somebody else but Castellano riding. Not because I don't like Castellano, just because I think Castellano is going to attract money to this horse. But he's just my kind of horse in this kind of race. I think he can be close enough to the pace. And he's just one of those horses who has a really good, if you sort of pick apart his form, he has actually a really good record on the main track. He's one of those horses, he spent the first, 18 or 20 starts of his career running on turf and synthetic and just, not winning any races. And as soon as they switched him over to dirt, he got good. This is his surface. He's kept pretty good company. He's won going this far before. He probably would have had another win on his resume for that race 2 starts back, but he had trouble at a really crucial point in that race, and he ran well. And his last race was fine. I mean, that pace really held together in front of him, but he tried. He just couldn't catch those horses. So I took him without any real conviction, and I certainly wouldn't take too short a price on him, but he was the horse that I wound up picking in the opener.
David, how about you? What'd you come up with for the opener?
Yeah, like Mike, I'm afraid of actually both Rudy horses. Indicat's not a horse that I love, but I do think he's going to appreciate getting back out around the 2 turns. I think that's what he wants to do. River Date, I didn't love his last race. He's going first off the claim for Rudy, though, and he's got great numbers doing that at Saratoga on the dirt. So I've got to respect that horse. I looked at Rich Daddy for a long time, like Mike. I didn't love that they had run him so cheaply recently, kind of, even though his form hadn't declined that much. It just seemed like he was running below prices that he was worth. He did run well 2 back, and even last time against the pace. I agree with that. But if I was considering him, I just kind of had to end up picking Flash Trading on top, who's probably going to be a better price. Probably a much better price. He faced a similar field last time, and just watching that race, he really had no chance. There were 5 horses in the field. They basically were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 the entire way around the racetrack. Nobody ever changed position. He was coming off a layoff that day. You look back at his prior form, he was just facing tougher fields on too many occasions. He never had a chance. 2 back, breaking from post 13 at Gulfstream at that 1.16 distance. And prior to that, he was facing some nice horses like December 7, who was really good at that time last year. And going back to Saratoga, this meet last year, I mean, I know he was in Al Stall's barn at that point, but he ran well at this distance twice. And I'm not sure that he's actually lost his form as much as the published races recently would make it seem like. So I'm hoping he can rebound a little bit. He's drawn towards the inside, which I like. So I'm going to take a shot with him at a big price.
Yeah, there would be big balloons to get the meet started. We'll take that. Absolutely. Let's move on to the second race. David, we'll keep it with you to get your thoughts on this one.
So, there's very little turf form to go on in this race. The one horse with reasonably, with any turf form at all is Wanda Fay, who just didn't do much running when she got on the turf last time. It was a better field than she's facing this time, but she was up on a pretty moderate pace and just didn't have much to finish with. So I'm kind of looking in other directions. I guess the horse to beat is Beau Arts, who's trying the turf for the first time for Russell Cash, who's kind of under the radar trainer. But I mean, if you watch the NYRA circuit enough, you know that he can get a long shot home. And when he's got a good horse in his barn, he can keep it in form. If you remember the nice New York bred filly Old Harbor who ran around here for a while, she was one of his best horses. This filly, she's by Freud. She's a half dark roast who was a turf sprint winner. The other half sibling out of nowhere, was a maiden her entire career, but she's also a horse that prefers turf. And she ran really well in her debut at Monmouth Beau Arts. She was battling with a nice looking Kelly Breen horse through fast fractions. Just kind of couldn't stick with that horse late. But that was an encouraging race. And if she takes to turf, which she's supposed to, I don't think she's going to have that much to beat in here, because you're looking at the first time starters, and I don't know which one you're supposed to trust. I guess the one that's going to take the most money is Scatback for Carlos Martin. She's a Scat Daddy. She's a half to two turf winners. Carlos Martin's not really a guy that's necessarily known for winning with firsters. He had a turf sprint winner win his debut as a 2-year-old last year. I think that horse was Berks County, I think his name was.
Right.
So, maybe this horse is going to be live. But for me, it was probably those two.
Gotcha. Mike, how did you see it?
Exactly the same way. I liked Beau Arts. I get Scatback. Not that I love that horse, but at least has some pedigree. Carlos can win with the first time starter. The only other horse I'm going to use if I play the pick 5 is Lady of Miracles. Mike Maselli doesn't have some big history with first time starters, but it's a really small sample. But he does a good job overall. And, this horse has at least some turf. He's by Teufelsberg. The Dam was a winner on the grass. She has 2 foals. They're both winners. One of them, a horse named Canarsie Kid, is a 2-time turf sprint winner. The horse has a lot of speed. So if this horse, sort of anything like that one, I suppose that she could run pretty well in this race, and she's probably a price. But I mean, like David said, there's really not a ton to go on as far as form goes. And so you're sort of left to guess. I was, happy to guess that Beau Arts would be fine on the turf, considering all the things that, David had mentioned. And then, from there, it was a little bit, more murky. I don't need Wanda Fay in this race at, what it should be a relatively short price. So I'll use Beau Arts and then use the 2 first-time starters.
You mentioned thinking about maybe playing the early pick 5, Mike. The middle leg in that, of course, will be this third race going back to 2 turns on the dirt. How would you try to get through this leg?
Yeah, this is a pretty interesting race. I mean, it's a short field. Point Hope, he's 2-1 on the line. I suppose he's the horse to beat. I would have to use him. He's not really my kind of horse, and I'll be interested to see what he does Friday. I'm also interested to hear what David has to say about him. I just, he's just not my kind of horse. I've liked him from the start. I've never really felt like he was one of those horses we were talking about before who, would really like the 2-turn route racing up in Saratoga. I really feel like he's more of a 1-turn route kind of horse. And I just, I have a tough time buying into these horses that, all of a sudden, Point Hope, who's always been a decent horse, he's running a big new career top figure off the claim for a guy who was improving horses all meet long downstate, and his 34th career start. I guess it's possible he could do it again on Friday, but he's not really my kind of horse. The 2 horses that I really just felt like I would try to beat him with, one of them was Sir Tap, sort of an interesting claim for Jeremiah Engelhardt. This horse did no running on turf last time. I don't care about that race. His dirt route form from Oaklawn was fine. I mean, they weren't fast races. I don't know that he was in the strongest fields either, but he ran fine both times, and he has some positional speed. I like that about him. I was going to use him, and I was going to use Mark Hennig's horse, Carlino, the 2. He's a little bit more of a reach, I suppose. But I liked his maiden win last time. And, another one, I don't think he beat the greatest field in the world, but I don't, really know what that means in this kind of a race. And I liked the way that he won last time, fell out last early, made a long, sustained run all the way up the backstretch, all the way through the turn, kept going through the stretch, and then won clear. I like that performance from this horse. So I'm hoping that he's pretty good. And I was hoping that maybe in this pick 5, get the 2 or the 4 home over Point Hope. And, the horse down on the rail, the 1 Awfully Brawn. I mean, he's got a big figure from his last race. I want to see him do it again, especially if he gets back.
All right, David, how did you see race 3?
Like Mike, I think this race kind of goes through Point Hope. One thing I'll note about Robertino Diodoro, his trainer, is that, you see a lot of these claiming trainers claim a horse, get a big win out of them, and then run them back, and they're typically underlays and they underperform. That's not the case with this guy. Second off the claim, having won their race first off the claim over the past 5 years, he's 23 for 58, 40%, a healthy 260 ROI. So, I mean, he gets them to run those big races back. So I've got to respect that. But like Mike, I don't really see this horse as a 9-furlong, 2-turn kind of horse. He runs his best races going that like 1-turn mile at Belmont and Aqueduct. So that kind of worries me with him, and he's just not going to offer any value in this race. I've seen some people on Twitter like Sir Tap, and I hear Mike making a case for him. I don't get that horse at all. I know Jeremiah Englehart's having he's on quite a run, but I look back at his Oaklawn form, and I don't know. He's facing terrible fields. He wasn't running particularly fast. I don't know. I just don't see it. The horse that I was interested in this race is Sir Ballantyne. I know he hasn't run particularly fast as either, but just looking at the form of the races he's coming out of and who he faced, he's just been meeting some pretty tough fields in almost all of his starts. I mean, he faced horses like Takeoff and Arklow and Super Tapit and Multiplier and maiden races early in his career. Even at Keeneland, 3-back when he faced Take Your Guns, who's a nice Chad Brown horse. I thought he ran well. He finally put together a Churchill 2-back, Perfect Partner, who he beat, came back and won with a much faster speed figure at Belmont next time. And he's not a turf horse, but I actually liked his turf race last time at Churchill. I mean, he was kind of getting bumped around in the stretch. He had every right to kind of throw in the towel in that race. I thought he stayed on really well. He is the kind of horse that is going to love this 2-turn mile and an eighth at Saratoga. He just has a ton of stamina. So if there's one horse in this race that I think is going to actually take a step forward today and run a faster speed figure, it's Sir Ballantyne.
Mike, do you care to offer any sort of impassioned defense of Sir Tap to David's points?
No, I don't. Why would I defend that horse? I put him either second or third in my picks, and I'll use him in the pick 4. But he's certainly not a horse that I love.
Not a horse you want to necessarily nail yourself to the post.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't. Yeah, no doubt. I wouldn't do that for anybody in this field. I think I made Sir Tap my 3rd pick in the race. I mean, I'm going to use him. But yeah, I don't. This is just the kind of race where the favorites didn't do a lot for me, and it got me looking around.
Makes sense. Another word from our sponsor here about the Saratoga Bankroll Builder. America's favorite promotion is back just in time for the Saratoga race meet. Bet $50 to win in any or all of the following stakes races and earn a $20 bonus per race. Participate in all 5 races and earn a $100 bonus. They are on July 22nd, the Diana, July 29th, the Jim Dandy, August 5th, the Whitney, August 12th, the 4-Star Dave, August 19th, the Alabama. Earned bonuses will be placed in player accounts on Wednesday, August 23rd for betting during Travers Weekend. With Naira Bets, you simply win more, plain and simple. Naira Bets is available to horse players nationwide. Go to nairabets.com and enter the promo code DRF200 to instantly qualify for the Bet 200 Get 200 promotion. Lots of other information about the other promotions. You can find it all at nairabets.com. Naira Bets, racing's best play. All right, we got 3 races in. We got 7 more to talk about, and we will go back. We'll turn the page here to race 4, and David, we'll start with you for your thoughts.
I think the question that you first have to answer in this race is how low of a price is too short on pattern recognition, because he's the horse to beat. He's the most likely winner, but this is the kind of horse that I could really see them going overboard on with Chad Brown and Castellano, and got the fastest speed figures. He's lightly raced. Look, he's the horse to beat, but I don't think he has to win this race. He ran well against Coal Front last time. It was a really nice Pletcher horse, and he got a pretty good trip that day, but he really ran. I get all that. But there are some other horses in this race that are interesting, that are just probably going to be inflated prices because they are just going to probably look at this as a one-horse race with pattern recognition. There's a ton of speed in this race. If you look at the pace projector, I think that's a good representation of just how many horses are going to be trying to get to the front here, because you've got about 5 or 6 that run their best races on or near the lead. One of them being Takaful, who's the real wild card in this race. If he ever runs back to his debut at Belmont last year, he can beat this field and beat pattern recognition with the speed figures he's running today. It's just, I don't know how you can trust this horse to do that. I mean, sure, he doesn't want to go 2 turns, but his last 2 races were just dreadful. So they've got to get him turned around. I'm not going to be shocked if they do it. I just don't totally trust that horse. I'm worried that the horse that I picked is going to maybe be too obvious as like the wise guy horse in this race with so much speed signed on. But I went to So Noted, who's run well up at Saratoga before. He had really improved for Charlton Baker last year when he was running in the summer at Belmont. He came off a year layoff recently, and it just seemed like they weren't really riding that race to win. They just let him drop out early, never really got into him around the turn, and just he made a bit of a late run, never really got anywhere near pattern recognition that day. Just seemed like they were giving him a race. Now he's getting reunited with Joel Rosario, who's the rider that got the most success out of him early in his career. And he's got to run a little bit faster, but he's got some reasonably fast races on his record. And I just thought So Noted was the right wise guy horse in this race.
Mike, what are you going to do with pattern recognition and the rest of the field here in the 4th race?
Yeah, I agree with David that I think I'm gonna be surprised if he wins. I think he's a really good shorter priced favorite, if he is indeed a shorter priced favorite to try and beat on this card. I think he's run just fine in his first 2 starts, but I don't think there's anything that special about either one of his races. He can win. He's 8-5 on the line. I think that's way too short in this field, because I think there are some good horses in here, and David's horse So Noted was one of the ones I'm using for all the reasons he mentioned, and also just the fact that he's a horse who benefits if he catches a pace in front of him, and I think he will catch a pace in front of him. His win last June at Belmont, that 7 furlong race, that was one of those races, a big heavy hitting in front of him in that race. He came with a good run and closed it down. I like that horse, and I think he gets a good setup in here. Takaful, I guess. I don't know what to really do with him in this race. I don't think he's the kind of horse I would necessarily want to get knocked out of the pick 5 by, but I also don't think he's the kind of horse I'd want him to be pressing in that bet either. I would just sort of use him defensively. I'm using Hard Scramble again. He's a horse, I tried to, make some money with him at Woody Stevens last time. That turned out to be way too tough a spot for him. He was contesting the pace around to the top of the stretch, and then he was just no match for those horses. I think he is a match for these horses, and I do think this is a horse who's really improved since Asmussen turned him back. So, I like Hard Scramble and So Noted, to be my 2 horses to try and, beat the more logical, obvious kind of favorites in the race with. I'll admit to, trying to talk myself into the import for Mott, however you want to pronounce that name, via Ignacia. That horse has obviously a really, really, really big pedigree, but I don't know, man. I feel like, first of all, I don't think his European form's anything special, and second of all, 9-2 feels like a pretty bad price on him. And it's not like he just, fell into some really easy entry-level allowance race here.
We've been looking at the time form USPPs throughout. I just want to make 3 really quick points about some cool aspects of them before we get it back to Mike Beer and he tells us how he's going to close out this pick 5. But we're talking about via Ignacia, and you can see the detailed European notes in here that you can click on and get a lot more detailed information. We talked about Hard Scramble, that fast pace that Mike Beer mentioned. That just leaps off the page with these red coded numbers, just showing you how fast indeed that pace was, and creating a built-in excuse for the no the seemingly no finish at the end of that race. Looks a lot better in the context of those pace figures. And So Noted talked about, David mentioned all the speed in here. You can see in this snapshot on the Timeform US preview page that gives a closing speed number essentially, and you can see the advantage that So Noted potentially has with that 89, well clear of anybody else in here. Just a few of the cool features you can take a look at when utilizing the Timeform USPPs, and in my opinion the best way to do that is in conjunction with the DRFPPs, whether you're using Classic or Formulator that I just pulled up on the screen here. So here we go, 2-year-olds, 5.5 furlongs. We're closing out this early pick 5. I'm going to guess a little bit of a spread race here, Mike, or have you found a way to narrow it down?
Yeah, it's pretty tough. I mean, I always start these races anyway, the 2-year-old races, trying to decide, which one of the horses with experience I like the most, because I almost always want them over first-time starters. But then in this race, I don't know, I look at the races with experience and I kind of don't like any of them. I really don't like Amazing Belle, the 4, and I'm not going to be surprised when she wins, going turf to dirt for Mark Casse, but I don't know. I didn't see this horse do any running in either one of her 2 starts. I guess we'll see what happens. Her debut wasn't terrible, but it's not like she had some kind of big excuse in that race. I don't really like this horse. The other horse on the outside, the 9, Sunny's Funny, is one I have to use. Another one who I didn't think did anything special first time out. I don't love that debut, but it's Steve Asmussen. This is his thing. You can look him up in Formulator. It's sort of, one of those stats that everybody knows by now. And, the more people that know it and the longer that it's out there, the less effective it becomes. But 2-year-old maiden, second-time starter, dirt sprint. It's a huge sample of horses. They win at almost 30%. The ROI is positive. And then, you take that stat, and I see you're pulling it up there now. Once you get that up there and you see how, just how strong he is with these horses, 2-year-old first-time starter.
Oh, right.
Starter.
This is right. We got to put
do
first.
do second career start.
Second time starter. Yeah.
Yeah, second career start maiden though. So it's
I'll get it. Don't you keep going. I'll get
second
it.
Career start maiden. So it's a positive move for Asmussen over a long period of time from a big sample. And then you do all that and you narrow it down to Saratoga, and it gets even better. He's 9 for his last 21, 408 ROI. So you're just doing really well betting these horses. I don't like this horse's debut. That bothers me. But I'll use it because I respect Asmussen with these horses. The other horse that ran Southampton Way, the 5, I suspect will run better than she did first time out. Horatio DePaz does really, really unbelievable work with 2-year-olds, especially first time starters. This one happened to catch a muddy track first time out, and sort of got outrun to the lead, took a ton of mud in her face, didn't run. I think she'll run better. The problem is when you pull up the chart for that race and start looking at the horses that she ran against. I mean, there's just no kind way to put it. The 2 horses that ran 1-2 in that race are, they ran in maiden claimant races before that and did no running after that. And so it's hard for me to really talk myself into Southampton Way, although maybe at a big price, a horse to include for, 50 cents or something, at least to use underneath. If Everybody Loves Me gets in, I'll use that horse on the outside. Worked 9 and 4 at OBS April. Pedigree to be fast. John Terranova, I just think is an underrated trainer, and gets, he gets good races out of his stock. And because he's the trainer of this horse, instead of somebody else, maybe this horse just won't get pounded at the windows. We'll see. And obviously you got the Pletcher first time starter to deal with, Honey Glow. I don't know. This is the first Pletcher 2-year-old, the filly that he's got. She's a homebred. Okay, but she's got some pedigree. I mean, Spikestown, Dam Side, it's there. Pletcher figures tough with this kind of horse, so I would use that horse.
David, what do you think about this race in general, and how would you narrow it down?
Yeah, I don't want to rehash what Mike said about the horses that ran because I pretty much agree with everything he said. I would just say that I maybe take a slightly more kind view of Southampton Way in this race because I just feel like the fact that she was bet down to 6-5 and that she did no running in that race, and now they're running her at Saratoga off of that effort, and the fact that Horatio DePaz sent so few horses up to the meet last year just makes me think that they've got to think this horse is going to run a lot better this time. So I want to use her, but the other two, I'll use them defensively. They just didn't do it for me. Of the first-time starters, Honey Glow is the one you obviously have to respect for Fletcher. This one's got a huge dam side pedigree. The dam herself is a full sister to Indian Vale, who was a nice multiple grade stakes winner. She's out of Marley Vale, who won the test at Saratoga back in the late 90s. So there's, a lot of dam side pedigree here, more route pedigree, but she is by Speightstown. In terms of other firsters, I think you've got to be aware of the Ingrid Mason firster, Crimson Creed. She had a first-time starter that was bet down to a crazy price at Saratoga last year, like 6-5. Didn't do any running, but took a lot of money that day. She's good with firsters, sprinting across the board. She's 8 for 40 over the past 5 years, almost a $3 ROI. And this one's, got a little pedigree on the dam side. Jimmy Creed's off to a nice start as a sire, so that one seems okay. The other one that I would want to throw in is Sorority Sweetheart for Michelle Nevin. I know Michelle Nevin's not really known as a first-time starter trainer, but she's had more success over the past year, and this one just has a pedigree that says she's going to be a fast horse. She's a full sister to Classy Class, who's a nice sprinter, and Full House, who is a more lightly raced 3-year-old filly, but who also has run well in a couple of starts. So she's one that I want to throw in, but this is a spread race for me.
Lots of ideas there on how to close out the early pick five, and then we get up to the late pick five, and that's the topic of our next notice from our sponsor tonight, Naira Bets, talking about the Naira Bets late pick five. Racing's best bet is finally here. The late pick five at Saratoga is exclusively available for Naira Bets customers, and for the month of July, Naira Bets customers qualify for a $100,000 single winner payout if there's a lone winner. On opening day, Friday, July 21st, hit the Naira Bets late pick five and earn a 10% winner's bonus as well. Bonuses are capped at 100 per player. You can find the details and play the Naira Bets Pick 5 nationwide at nairabets.com. Naira Bets, racing's best play. And speaking of this late Pick 5, David, how are we going to get it started off?
This race gave me a headache. There's just so many ways to go, and there's really no horse that you can kind of latch onto as the horse to beat because it's just so confusing. I guess the horse to beat for me, after I really spent a long time looking at this race, is Same Kind of Crazy, the number 11 horse. Her two races at Belmont Park this spring were both okay. She had some pretty significant trouble two back, kind of just stymied in behind horses at the top of the stretch. She got clear late, but just, kind of maybe got her momentum taken away at a critical point. And then last time, that was the kind of race where horses were really rallying outside and she had to angle inside late, and I thought that wasn't really the place to be for her at the end of that race. So, and also those are just marginally tougher fields than what she's facing here. So I kind of think she's the right horse to maybe key off of, but I hate the post position, so that's a negative. There are so many horses you can use in this race. I ended up picking Mo Promise on top, the 3-horse. I don't have the greatest confidence that she's going to resurrect her form that she showed in her debut as a 2-year-old last year. But I just feel like they probably were giving her a race first time back, going a distance that's too far for her last time at Belmont against a tougher field than the one she's facing today. And they basically just eased her at the end of that race. You go back to that debut at Saratoga last summer, she was second, over 4 lengths clear of the rest of the field. That's usually indicative of a pretty strong effort. The horse that beat her, Lady Joan, is a New York Bred Turf Stakes winner these days. I don't totally trust that these connections are going to get her back to that, but I feel like off of the recent form, she's going to be a pretty big price. I like that she's drawn down inside. There's some speed in this race that she's going to be able to close into. So I picked her. I've got to throw Ingrid in there somewhere. I don't totally trust that she's a turf horse, but, she does feel like the kind of horse that wants to go the 5.5 furlongs. Gemologist is a decent turf sire, and while it's more dirt on the dam side, she has half to 1 turf winner. So I'll use her, but this is a pretty tough race.
11-3-8 are the numbers David's thinking about. Mike, are you similar, or do you have some different suggestions for race 6?
Yeah, well, yeah, for a race that's a little bit of a mess, and full of horses who I don't think you want to be striding up to the window and making huge bets on. I sort of agree with David. I mean, I'll use same kind of crazy. I don't love that post, but I think that horse is sort of logical in this race. But to me, when all was said and done, this race to me is about Mo Promise, and it's kind of about nobody else. I mean, I'm willing to give her the chance to rebound off of that seasonal debut where there was a fast pace and she got close to it. And, as David said, she was just sort of eased off in the stretch there. It was a race she wasn't going to win against way better horses. And, like him, and I like the way he put it, so I'm just going to, say the same thing. I don't trust these connections to get her back to that debut. I think that's a kind way of putting it. But I think if she, runs something like she ran first time out, and obviously, factoring in natural improvement from 2 to 3, I just think that she'll win. Maybe she can't do it. And maybe, I'm just giving her too much credit for that debut. But I think she'll win if she can get back to something like that in this race. And I'll give her the chance to do it here because there's not another horse in this field that I would bet real money on.
It's a logical case for a horse that should be a good price. All right, we've got 4 races left to discuss. We did start a little bit late tonight, so we've got about 15 minutes left to go. We don't have to go into like full-on speed round here, but just something to be a little bit conscious of as we go forward, because it would be great to get to a question or two if there's time. If not, we'll do Twitter handles at the end, and people can fire us questions on there. But race 7, we're going 1 mile and 3/8 on the turf. Mike, why don't you start us off here?
Yeah, I'm gonna take a shot here with the 4 Muktazer for Kieran. I feel like, and this may be too tough a spot for this horse, and maybe it's just too late for this horse. But you sort of start looking at him, and I can understand, why they tried to make him a dirt horse after that race got rained off at Belmont last fall. He ran the big figure. He just blew that field out of the water. I get it. I get them, trying to think, oh, maybe we got a pretty decent dirt horse on our hands. He's not a dirt horse. He's way better on the grass. I probably, I don't know that I loved the field last time when they switched him back at Monmouth, but he probably would have won that race. You can go back and watch the replay. And Bravo tried to come up the inside with him. I think he got stopped, and I think he got stopped enough that it cost him the half length. He got beat. And going back to his European form, and Pete, you were talking about it before with the time form US PPs, you can go back and look at his running lines in Europe, and he was shaping as a really promising turf horse over there. They liked what they were seeing from him. He has a win over there over a distance of ground at 1.25 miles, and they really liked that win from him. And it's, he reportedly bled in that final start over there, so you can put a line through that one. I feel like this is a turf horse getting back to the right surface, and in this the sort of field where I get Messi. I know that he can win, but I'm not a huge fan of his. I would use Messi. I guess Highland Sky, who I want to be better than he is right now. I'm not so sure that I think he's a true long distance horse. Highland Sky, I'd love to see them cut him back in distance, but he can win. I'm just I feel like he's not turning out to be as good as I thought. So, those horses, but I just want to bet Muktazer at a better price in this race.
David, how did you see it?
Mike and I are on the exact same page here with Muktazer. I think he could have won both of his starts in this country on the turf. You go back to that Belmont race in September of last year, and he was kind of down inside, never really clear in the stretch without real trouble. But I think if he had gotten through that day, he probably could have gotten up. Like Mike said, his race last time wasn't the strongest field, but he had trouble. It showed that he's at least back in form these days. His turf form is just solid, and I like the stretch out. And the other thing that I'll mention about him is the fact that he's got tactical speed, and that's always dangerous in these longer races at Saratoga. I mean, you've got Infinite Wisdom, the 5 horse, is probably going to go out to the front, and Mark My Style's got some speed as well, but he should be able to slot in right behind those horses, safe ground on the rail, and I just think he's going to work out the right trip, and I'm just not afraid of anybody else in this race. I was a huge Highland Sky fan at the start of the year, but I just can't take him off his last race. Javier rode him the right way. I know the pace was pretty moderate, but he got there at the top of the stretch, and he was just supposed to close those horses down, and he couldn't do it. I just hated the way he hung at the end of that race. The horse you're supposed to want out of that race is Red Rifle, who I don't know what the plan was coming into the stretch last time, but he just was never given any chance to run, just kind of ridden into traffic behind horses, and he probably would have won that race if he had gotten through. The problem with him is that he just doesn't win anymore, and it's been, I think, since the Bowling Green at Saratoga of 2015 that he last won a race. So I don't totally trust him either. I guess Black Sea is going to take money for Chad Brown. I just don't know how good that horse is. You look at his European form, and he's mostly racing at lower level tracks against horses that I'm not really familiar with, and there's nothing to really recommend about his first race in this country, albeit over a wet turf course at Churchill Downs. Maybe he wants more distance, but he's going to take money in this race just because. And in a race where I don't love anybody, I think there's good reason to take a long look at Mook Taser, and he's the horse I want to bet.
If Kieran McLaughlin gets off to a hot start in 2017, as he did in 2016, we'll have giving out a nice winner on the show. It sounds like a very compelling case from both of you there. Let's move on to the 8th race. It's the Schuylerville. David, who's going to get the job done here?
I think I watched all of these replays at least twice because this is really a race where you just kind of have to watch how these horses ran first time out and then kind of make some comparative judgments, which is it's hard to do. I guess I'll start with the horses that I'm against. I'm against Buy, Sell, Hold, the 2 horse, who I might be the favorite here, although it's hard to say. I just didn't think she beat a whole lot last time, and she was kind of life and death to Hold On, going 5 furlongs. The horse that finished second that day came back and didn't run too well in the next 2-year-old filly stake they ran at Churchill Downs. So I'm just not in love with that horse. I think some of the recent maiden breakers are probably better. I'm also against Dream It Is, the horse that's coming off 2 blowout wins at Woodbine. I'm not really convinced that she's a dirt horse. There's more turf on the dam side. This trainer has started a lot of horses, but she's 0 for 3 on the dirt over the past 5 years. So that stat is hard to take. I'm mostly looking at horses that are coming off maiden wins. The horse that impressed me the most, actually, watching races, was Limited View, who won at Laurel first time out. I mean, if you watch that race, this filly was just in hand and really gapped out a field that I think is okay. The 3rd place finisher came back and lost the maiden race by a couple lengths, sort of the same speed figure next time out. And this filly Limited View, was just in control throughout. This barn knows how to win with young horses, and I think she's okay, and maybe she'll be a decent price in this race. The other 2 that you have to use are the ones that are going to take money, Snowfire and Stainless, for Mark Cassidy and Todd Pletcher. Snowfire is the one that probably has the most upside. She's got a pedigree to really stretch out. I'm not totally convinced that she's really a dirt horse because her dam was really more of a turf runner. And the way she kind of was just awkwardly striding through the stretch at Churchill first time, I just wonder if there's more turf in her future. But I think you have to respect her anyway because she did rate and win last time. And Stainless, I don't know what she was beating for Pletcher last time, but I mean, if you look up Pletcher's stats coming off maiden wins, next time out with Johnny Velasquez up, the stats are just great. So, I mean, you have to respect that horse. But for me, it's mostly 5, 8, and 9 in this race.
Mike, how do you see it?
Yeah, I sort of agree with that. With David's, sentiment on Limited View is sort of one that I share. Just like, this is like sort of a ridiculous horse they paid no money for, who had just 0 pedigree, but really ran first time out. I love this horse's debut. I don't know, this is going to be a lot tougher for her, obviously, but that was quite a scene, man. First time out. I love the way this horse ran. I picked Pletcher on top, chickened out a little bit. But I like that horse's debut. I like that she's drawn outside. The thing that I liked most about her debut is just the fact that, the horse that was second to her, Go Astray, I don't think she's a superstar, but she happens to be really fast. I mean, every one of her races, she just races out to the front and like opens up on fields. And, so this horse was, sort of put in a tough spot first time out, just having to chase the entire way. And I like the way that she did it, and I like the way that she ran by that horse in the stretch. So I picked her. Pletcher's pretty reliable with these kinds of horses. And I just, the only thing that I really like about Snowfire is that she won at 6 furlongs already. And I think that's a big thing with, everybody else in this field, sort of trying to get more distance now. She's already gotten the 6, so that's a sort of a feather in her cap. That being said, I mean, I don't like her in this race. I don't like the race that she won first time out. I don't like the horse that she beat. That Our Girl Abby is a horse that we've seen a few times now. We've seen her in New York already once. She's not good. And, this horse to me just feels like, maybe she's a relatively short price in this race. And I just, you get killed betting short priced horses from this barn. They just, you just take the worst of it every time. I don't think they get very much out of these kinds of horses. So Snowfire, I want to use her a little bit because she's got the win at the 6, and especially if she's, if the morning line holds and she's that price, I can't argue too hard against her, but man, I don't love that debut win from her.
All right, let's go on to the 9th race here. It is the Lake George, grade 3, mile and a 16th on the turf. I don't know why I'm echoing all of a sudden. Hopefully everybody isn't hearing that. Hopefully that's just on my end. Mike, we'll keep it with you. What do you think of the Lake George?
It's a good race. There are a lot of good horses in here. I like Defiant Honor a lot in this race for Jimmy Toner. This horse was a good 2-year-old. I think ran the best race in the Jimmy Durante, that ridiculous race at Del Mar at the end of last year where there was, debris all over the track and, everybody had trouble. I think this horse ran the best race that day, even though she didn't win. And I like the way that she came back off the layoff. She had a nice trip in that race. But I like the way that she kicked clear from that field with a new top figure. To me, she has Stakes horse written all over her for Toner. I like her in this race and, just wanted to use horses like, I guess I'll use the Cassie horse on the outside. Dream Dancing. I don't know how much better it gets for her from here, but I do think they'll, from post 11, I think they'll let her fall back and sort of make one run into this race. And I think that might be a preferred style for her. And I think that will help her. And, Proctor's Ledge is a horse I have a little thing for. I'm starting to get a little tired of her, but she's had a couple of trips in her recent races. And, now it's Lasix and a rider change. And, I do think she's pretty good. So I'm going to use her, but I really do like Defiant Honor in this race.
David, what do you think about the second stake on the opening day card?
I picked Defiant Honor too. I'm not quite as confident in her as Mike sounds, but I did pick this horse. There are about 5 horses that I think could win this race, and I just thought she's supposed to be the best price. I'm not totally confident that she will be because it seems like a lot of people like this horse, and these are connections that people know, do well in this race. It's just a family horses that she's a have to or related to that just do well up in Saratoga. So I think there are a lot of angles pointing to this horse that people are aware of. So we'll see what kind of price she is, but I have nothing to add to what Mike said about her races. She's just shown a lot of talent in her career, and I think she's ready to take this step forward. She projects to work out a great trip because she's got a little bit of speed, and there's not a ton of pace in this race. I guess victory to victory is going to go from the outside. They're taking the blinkers off, but she's still pretty speedy, and nobody else has that much speed in here. So I think Defiant Honor is probably going to slot in right behind her. Maybe Sweeping Patties to her outside, but I picked Defiant Honor on top. The other horse that I think can win are 55, who I don't really love her races, but she's drawn towards the rails. She's not the kind of horse that has to be 15 lengths out of it early, so she projects to work out a pretty good trip. I don't love her, but I have to use her. Like Mike, I like Proctor's Ledge too, but I'm kind of worried that she might be left with too much to do in this race, like she so often is. Last time she was just too far back in that regret, and Sweeping Patty got the jump on her. Proctor's Ledge was really finishing at the end of that race, but I don't want to take anything away from Sweeping Patty. She ran really well. She wasn't exactly stopping at the end. She won by 3.5 lengths. My problem with Sweeping Patty is that she seems to do her best running in Kentucky. Maybe she's just improved, but she's got to take that show on the road. And Dream Dancing, I guess she's like the 5th horse for me because from that post, she's probably going to have to drop all the way to the back of the pack, and that's what she likes to do, but she's just going to have a lot of ground to make up here. She's talented, but I don't think she really has any edge on this field, and she tends to take some money. So for me, it's Defiant Honor over Proctor's Ledge and Sweeping Patty.
With a couple others to maybe throw in for folks who are looking to spread a little bit in this NYRA Bets late pick 5. And that brings us to the anchor leg of that pick 5 and the nightcap on the card. David, how are we going to close it out?
There are some interesting things going on in this race, and I would first just say don't just default to Sweet Connie Girl, the Chad Brown horse, who is probably going to take money in here just because it's Brown, Castellano dropping from a maiden special weight to maiden claiming race. If you watch her races, there's just not a whole lot to recommend. She's just kind of this plodding horse that runs along at the back of the pack, maybe picks up some pieces if others get tired, but her races just really do nothing for me. So I'll use her defensively, but I'm kind of against her. The interesting horses to me in this race are Submit for Christophe Clement, who had just a pretty weird trip last time at Belmont. Wasn't the strongest field, but she was up close early. You can watch the race. I don't know what was happening to her mid-pack, but somehow her rider ended up getting her all the way back to last place by the time they were rounding the far turn. And then horses were fanned out at the top of the stretch, and she came through on the rail again to be fourth. So that was a weird race. I don't know how good she really is, but I'll use her. My top pick, though, is Dynamic War for George Weaver. If you watch this filly's last race, she just had a nightmare of a trip. She was bumped at the start when she kind of broke inside, and she's a horse that would have wanted to be on the lead in that race, but the bumping incident had her towards the back of the pack. She got super rank after that and was running up on horses' heels and was wide, and just a terrible trip, facing a much tougher field. Now she's dropping in class. If you go back to races at Woodbine from last year, she was actually part of a really fast pace that fell apart back on November 10th. That race was dominated by closers. Look at her pedigree. She's supposed to like the turf. There's not a ton of speed in this race, so I think she can control things up front. So she's my top pick over Submit.
All right, Mike, how do you see this nightcap?
Yeah, sort of similarly. I mean, I don't know. It's like one of those races, I think, you sort of see all the drop downs sort of towards the outside of this field. And I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe just one of them will win. The 8, the 9, the 10, and the 12 are all getting, pretty significant class drops here. But, you go back and watch their races. I don't know. None of them have really shown that they can run all that much. I hear what David's saying about Dynamic War, and that was the only, sort of the main one maybe out of those 4 that I would want, just because the last race is a total pitch. I don't know. It doesn't mean that she can really run, but at least she has some speed. That does something for me anyway. I agree with him about Submit and that it was just such a silly trip that she got last time. She's just another one of those horses, though. You watch her 2 races. I don't know if she can run. I don't know. To me, it was just a race to spread around a little bit. And one horse that I am definitely going to use, who just may not be good enough, and is, obviously not one of these class droppers, is the 11 Pinch Penny. And not because I think she's great, but just because I know she'll be a price. And, they tried to wire that field last time. Didn't work out. Her race 2 back, she had a little bit of a trip in that race at Gulfstream. They sort of did her that day. From off the pace, it just didn't really work out for her. She got into some traffic through the stretch of that race, took a bump at the top of the stretch, had some trouble getting clear, but she was trying in that race. I mean, at least to me, she's one of the few horses in this race who showed a little something in one of her races. I'm going to use her at a big price in the finale, but it's just a race I don't have a real strong opinion in.
Some good ideas, though, for folks who want to spread around and end opening day a winner. Going to be a great meet at Saratoga, and it's a fun couple of days to kick it off. Unfortunately, we just don't have time for questions. I can't keep the guys any later than we already have, but I will, as promised, we'll do a quick round of Twitter handles if folks want to hit us up with anything on there. You can find me at Looms Boldly. David, I know it, but I don't want to get one letter wrong. So what is your Twitter handle?
It's at Horse to Watch.
Horse. I wasn't sure if it was horse or horses. And Mike, it seems like you've been maybe a little more active on there lately, maybe?
I have? Oh, somebody must have hacked my account. It's
but still,
BRF_beer, I think.
But don't be surprised if you get crickets. But with as busy as the man is.
I always say this, I'm not I don't have any use for, tweeting all day long, but I will answer questions. If people ask questions, I will answer.
Well, there you go. There you go. So that makes you a worthy follow in and of itself. And again, you can get analysis from these guys all meet long. DRF.com through the Timeform US blog, and I really encourage everybody to check out DRF TV and the videos that Mike does along with Dan Illman and Matt Bernier there, both previewing and reviewing stakes. Super helpful stuff that can really help enrich any player's trip notes. Guys, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out to be on the show, and I suppose the next time I see you both, hopefully we'll be up at Saratoga.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. I appreciate it. Good job, David.
Yep, looking forward to it.
Excellent. I also want to thank everybody who tuned in. I want to let you know there will be a replay. The most frequently asked question I get, will there be a replay? Yes. If you want to go back, if you came in late, you want to check out the whole thing, drf.com/YouTube. And I definitely want everybody to go to nairabets.com. You got to check out this Bet 200, Get 200 sign-up bonus. Naira Bets is available nationwide, the only place to play the late pick 5 at Saratoga. A lot of good promotions. You can find them all. NairaBets.com. You'll see why people are calling it racing's best play. And that's all I got. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. Thanks again to everybody. You've been watching content produced by DRF.com.